I come to you, I want to sort of put my comments in a context. I'm a social worker in life, right? I have met, thank you, some social workers in here. I've made eye contact with people in our country that are suffering deeply. I've worked with homeless people. I'm infuriated by the reality that there are homeless people in the richest nation in the world. I know people who make a choice between buying medicine and buying food in order to survive. Imagine that. Diabetic medication, food in the United States of America, the richest nation in the world. So that's the context in which I speak to you. There's a little anger in my heart. American industry, what do we make anymore? What are the factories in this country producing? Weapons. Do we know the number one industrial export in this country? Weapons. We make weapons. Weapons are at the heart of industrial America. Seymour Melman, an economics professor and the grandfather of the economic conversion movement, he wrote extensively about the dangers of the permanent war economy. He told us that since the end of World War II, the federal government has spent more than half its taxes on past, current, and future military operations. It is the largest single sustaining activity of the US government. Let me say that one more time, military operations. The largest sustaining single activity of the United States government. Balance sheet calculations are not relevant to the military weapons manufacturers. The Pentagon, it doesn't play by the economic rules of producing the goods a community needs, selling them for profit, then using the profit for further investment in production. The managers who work for the Pentagon, they know their financial capital, America's taxes. It's a cash cow waiting to be milked. The consequences are real and quite serious. Melman noted years ago that US industry doesn't even have the tools we need to produce consumer products anymore. If we wanted to get back to industrial production that was useful for American consumers, we would need to build new tools and use consultants from other countries to show us how. The Pentagon's work typically provides union jobs and health benefits. Both of those are endangered species in America today. They also provide the false hope of job security. Local communities defend the jobs when there is a threat of loss, knowing that America has few other industrial jobs, and the service sector certainly doesn't provide the same standard of living. The corporate giants who work for the Pentagon, they figured out a long time ago that if they distribute production out across the country, they will generate increased political support and therefore protection for their weapons systems. As a result, the military-industrial complex has spread its tentacles throughout every US district. Last spring, I was at a conference where I heard Representative Jim McDermott from Washington State tell us that the 1991 Gulf War occurred not because the US feared Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait. The Arab nations in the area were well prepared to resolve that issue. Rather, the United States had a stockpile of weapons that needed to be used. We needed to keep production flowing. The Gulf War was also the United States' opportunity to test satellite-directed warfare. It was the world's first venture to militarize space. Although the Patriot missiles used in that war rarely hit their mark, United States warfighting had taken a turn toward what the Pentagon calls full-spectrum dominance. The US domination is complete, on the ground, in the seas, in the air, and now in space. Back in the 1980s, with the fall of the Berlin Wall, there were hopeful conversations and real planning in this country and in other parts of the world about what to do with what was called the peace dividend. Now that we had no enemy, no military competitor in the world, it was time to plan for how to rebuild our industry to produce goods that would create a stable and sustainable future for America's workers. Sadly, war makers have created more boogeymen, more enemies, that delude us into believing that the ludicrous notion that space-dependent weapon systems and even space-based weapons will keep us safe. It's time for us to dust off those old reports from the 80s. Let's review how planners advocated converting from a war economy to a peace economy. This planet needs dramatic change if we are to survive. We need to generate alternative renewable energy systems. This country needs a rail system that connects the communities. Right. We need to stop planning for future wars and start building for a sustainable future.